Exclusive contracted novel by Feilu Novel Network. SCP Steve, Containment expired. Immortal 682, Beautiful 166. A dense jungle, a vast wilderness. Thor's hammer, infinite gem of destruction. A dark elf sanctuary, a rough and savage tribe. The dragon nest on the high mountain and the mysterious site of the submarine MermaidOkay. Steve hasn't been to any of the above, but it's not necessarily the case. In the future, Feilu Novel Network reminds you that this novel and its characters are purely fictional. If there are any similarities, they are purely coincidental and should not be imitated. Chapter 1. Where the Hell Gate Opens. You are listening at novelfull.audio. A beautiful day, the password from the hidden space of the cloud storage was cracked and ended. Christina is very, very eager to propose to Steve whether she can return her computer to her. She can apply to headquarters. No, just about a broken computer, she can take the initiative and pay for a top-of-the-line alien for Steve. Not only does it fit Steve's identity, but it can also allow the cubes to surf the internet happily from the beginning. So, could you please stop talking? Listening to one unfamiliar and familiar vocabulary emerging from Steve's strange accent, Christina wished she could take off her white coat and find a special task force member to clear her memory. What else is there to delay beauty? Ender said you put that thing in a hidden folder and set a password. Ah, why did you even find that kind of thing? Fortunately, I designed a rigorous password and never told anyone about it. Steve and his team definitely couldn't guess. The password is quite difficult. I guessed it for a while but couldn't figure it out. Steve scratched his head, and Christina's expression softened slightly. If he hadn't guessed, it would have been better. If he hadn't guessed, my personal image would still be saved, so I took it upon myself and put a button on your computer. Christina felt a surge of unease in her heart, and she raised her head, asking stiffly. What is a button? Steve took out a remaining button from his pocket and placed it on the table. Then, as if to demonstrate the function of this thing, he took out the key to the specially made heavy-duty truck that Christina had given him from his pocket, placed the button on top, and lightly pressed it. Dida. A crisp sound came from outside the door, followed by the roar of the engine ignition. The unrestrained tone of the heavy truck struck Christina's heart, seemingly mixed with her heartbreaking voice. Immediately after, the special task force member on duty outside the door exclaimed in confusion. Wow, why did this car suddenly start? Perfect knife repair. Don't think, give up thinking. Christina already knows the ending. That heavy-duty truck was specially manufactured by the Foundation for Steve. Although the strength of the material was not as strong as Steve had hoped, it was not enough to smoothly navigate through the magma, but it was not unacceptable to just roll a few times. This type of car, which uses a certain amount of black technology, naturally has a first-class anti-theft function. After all, as the owner of the car, Steve is a person without any awareness of prevention. If the Foundation does not pay attention, the car may be driven by someone at some point, and there may be a big problem at that time. So, the car is equipped with a large number of anti-theft measures for identity verification, such as Steve's weight collected by the Foundation, a simple pressure gauge made on the seat cushion, and facial features of square people collected. There was no way. They originally wanted to collect iris, but after a lot of tinkering, Steve didn't have that thing. Helpless, a PhD in information communication volunteered to propose collecting facial features, his reason being that, Steve's face is full of pixels and mosaics, like a QR code, and I think this feature has strong non-replicability. So, Steve's specially designed facial recognition system emerged, which automatically brushed his face after Steve sat in the driver's seat, making a beep to confirm passage. Interns from the CN branch always roast that this thing makes people subconsciously think that the next second will ring, drop, Alipay will receive XXX yuan. In addition, there are many amazing designs that have never been seen before, which have been applied to Steve, the amazing SCP that has never been seen before. The result is that even the Foundation's specialized electronic warfare task force members are working hard, and it takes more than a day to unlock all the authentication passwords. By the way, among the D.level personnel, there was a guy known as the Battery Terminator who volunteered to accept the Foundation's invitation to participate in the design of the security system. He pointed out several issues that the senior researchers had not noticed, and confidently waited for the Foundation to recruit him as a talent. Then the leaders wrote the name of this Battery Terminator on the urgent list, citing, "This person is so terrifying that it cannot be left behind." Such strict security measures cannot be unlocked by just a symbolic car key. Even top-level hackers cannot break through this security line by building a studio with overtime calculations, unless they also have supercomputers. But all of this, a button solves the problem, and when you look at the button, it's still made of stone, which gives you a feeling of being incredibly cheap. All the wood is big, all the wood is big. Can you bring back a few of these buttons for me? The secret has been exposed. Christina decided to break the can and throw it. Anyway, you are a square person and there are no people from the Foundation here. You just saw through my true face, so what? Do you think anyone will believe you? It seems like there really is no, what's going on with my sarcastic tone. Since it's exposed, we need to exchange something to come back and stop the loss. This button looks good. Next time, if you encounter a door blocked by the reality distorter or the password box of the chaos disruptor, you don't have to put in so much effort to create an artistic explosion. Just press the button and it's done. I, Christina, am truly one of the top 10 employees of the Foundation. At times like this, I am always thinking for the benefit of the Foundation. Don't have the face to take things from Steve, it's like disregarding my personal image. If I were to be seen, I still have a personal image. Steve is quite cheerful, the buttons are not worth much. With so many raw stones, he can easily make hundreds of sets, and it's not very useful to use them. What? Used to open the door. If I have that time to press the button, won't my pressure plates smell good? After casually handing over the remaining buttons to Christina and ensuring that there were no more to ask for, Steve finally got back to the main topic. What exactly is inside you? Is that your main topic? Cough. Alright, actually, I would like to ask for your help. Steve said seriously, last time I went to the garden arena, I saw something like yours that can produce and supply a city's energy needs. Can you also build one for me? Christina hesitated slightly and asked tentatively. What you said, a power plant. Steve nodded solemnly. Yes, the power station needs to be strong. Christina suddenly realized. Is that right? Although Steve is always able to come up with some magical things that break their glasses due to the world, human civilization for thousands of years still has its own merits. For example, for Steve, who still lives a primitive life, the miraculous assembly line production, power plant power supply, and innovative research and development. These things are not possessed by Steve, because one person can never create such brilliant products. This product is called industry. Small theater. Steve. Christina, take a look at this button and see if it looks like 10 Dongfeng heavy-duty trucks. Christina. How can you say it's like that? These are 20 heavy-duty trucks. An unknown researcher said, Mr. Steve, what are you doing when you put the button on Christina's supervisor's computer? Chapter 2. Where the Hell Gate Opens. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. An old man wearing a white patchwork approached the prison guards, pulled us out, gave us a code name, and transported us here, promising that as long as they completed this experiment, they would receive probation and even a chance of exemption. The word opportunity is very intriguing, but since I am always single, opportunities are still opportunities. If I don't go, I won't even have opportunities. In less than half a month, I will have to say goodbye to the world and then go see the shining God. So I came. Even if you anticipate that this experiment will definitely not be easy, as long as it is not done on me, it doesn't matter. There are so many people helping to block the knife, right? I am an old gambler now. This time, Swolha's life is fate, but my life has long been sold to the god of luck, so I cannot lose. This is a snow-white place. The walls around are all made of unknown materials, and I knocked on them. They are very hard and don't feel like they are easy to damage. And right in front of me, there is a stainless steel gate painted with strange symbols. That thing, probably RPG, can't even crash, right? What exactly is this ghost place used for? Remember, when you enter in groups of 3, you can't blink after entering. If you want to blink, you need to make gestures to those around you first. Otherwise, the Foundation will not be responsible for anything that happens. A man wearing a white patch, a mask, and sunglasses, with no exposed skin, warned me and handed me a broom. You, be responsible for cleaning after entering. After finishing speaking, the door slowly opened and I entered this mysterious area called Site.19 with a nervous heart. It is strange that although this area is enclosed with a thick gate, in reality, the interior of this area is a very ordinary scene. There are no crazy scientists, no twisted cannibalistic Uncle Hannibal, no witches, no monsters within the devil. I thought this kind of thing would definitely be everywhere in this mysterious organization. Sure enough, this is just an ordinary research institution. What is that statue for? It's so ugly, are we just going to clean this thing? Brother, D.123456, you and my Wi-Fi password share the same name. Do you know that we need to clean that thing? As I spoke, I turned my head. I seem to have forgotten something. It's really confusing, what have you forgotten? Fool. Dr. Andrew, who was responsible for monitoring the experiment, angrily pounded the table. This fool has already warned him, but he came up and delivered it. The researcher next to him smiled helplessly and shrugged. Are you ready to release them? By the way, please contact the prison for compensation and follow the procedures. The doctor nodded and remained silent, as if he had tacitly agreed to this plan. The researcher pressed the communication button on one side and said to the task force. Prepare to enter Site.19 and bring out the remaining 2 people. I'm about to open the door, 3, 2, 1. The gate remained motionless. Dr. Andrew frowned and looked at the researcher, puzzled, what's wrong? The door won't open, and... A drop of cold sweat fell from the researcher's forehead, and then he took a cold breath and pointed towards the door, emitting an unusual light on the display screen. Doctor, the unknown energy index is rapidly increasing, something is coming out. The condensed purple light transformed into a light ball, on both sides of the refined steel gate, resembling the appearance of God exerting divine power. Countless light worlds condensed into substantial light dots, covering the space here, forming a special square-shaped space. Immediately after, the purple light ball exploded, and under the energy radiation, the special space condensed into substance. A dark purple rectangular door composed of unknown rocks appeared before the symbol of SCP. The purple thin curtain blocks the symbols. The fastest responding task force commander gestured to the team members and quickly hid at the side door. Task force, find cover, prepare for battle. Intuition tells them that something terrifying has descended upon this world. Steve stepped out of the gates of hell, and Fong Fong's head scanned the internal environment. There was an ugly statue and 3 unidentified creatures in yellow clothes lying on the ground. Where the hell has this hell gate opened? The hell gate is a magical thing. It is always full of uncertainty, and every time Steve enters the gates of hell, it gives him a brand new experience. It may drive in the Dandruff Canyon, in the Mushroom Forest, or next to the Hell Fortress. If unlucky, it may even drive on floating rocks that violate Newton's laws, with bedrock on top and lava on the bottom. Survival is impossible, but death is impossible. By the way, what is Newton? Can it be milked? Although Hellgate had such characteristics, it was the first time Steve had encountered such a situation. Chapter 3. Master, be strong. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Although the world in front of us is still a rectangular room with sharp edges and corners, it is unusual to see a large round statue that is obviously different from square people. Colorful pigments bloom on the statue like direct sprinkling, but it does not dye the whole statue into a certain color like traditional dyeing. What kind of miracle is this? I remember I was playing pure survival. Surprisingly, rainbow blocks that are only available in mods appeared. Can someone else's world be achieved? Breaking the fourth wall is a common action, and Steve has always disdained to observe the world from the most divine perspective. After all, he lives in a world with a bug product like the Fate Cube, and the so-called fourth wall is just a game mode 1 command. Regardless of whether this is a new place in the lower world, in short, let's say hello first. So, behind the surveillance camera, Dr. Andrew and a group of researchers gazed at the unusual SCP block life in front of them, like a magic trick, without any warning, replacing his blue boots with gold, and miraculously replacing his long sword with a gold ingot. Doctor, have you seen it? The researcher instinctively rubbed his own eyes and murmured. Dr. Andrew frowned in displeasure. Of course he saw it, and he saw it very clearly. It was on side point 19, just a wall away from him, that the square life on the monitor unleashed his first ability as a newly born, unrecorded SCP container. A brand new item was created out of thin air without causing any energy fluctuations. If it were in the past, Dr. Andrew would definitely have put a big X on his internship file when he heard researchers questioning his visual stupidity. However, today alone, he can no longer care about the bureaucratic products of those twists and turns. His shock is not below that of the researcher. Even God creates life and generates energy. SCP-239, Witch Girl, who possesses almost omnipotent powers of mind and action, also experiences certain fluctuations in mind control when exerting her abilities, and can be blocked by SCP-148, mind-blocking alloy, without any energy fluctuations, creating things out of thin air. How terrifying and contrary to cosmic principles is this? This SCP is probably not easy to deal with. Dr. Tianchi-4 and Event 239.B. Clef Kondraki, the ability of a witch girl to achieve her dreams, played a strange role. He felt that Dr. Clef wanted to punish him severely, so Dr. Tianchi-4, who originally didn't want to do anything, really had the idea of killing him, which later triggered internal turmoil within Dr. Tianchi-4. Andrew dared not, like Dr. Clef, accidentally hit the corner of the table 9 times, paralyzing all below his neck, in exchange for a chance to prove the health of the block. He immediately pressed the emergency communication button and said to the busy sound coming from across from the transmitter. An accident occurred in the Side 19 detention room, and unregistered SCP lives suddenly appeared. The preliminary assessment level is at least. Keter. Please send a special task force to support immediately. Immediately afterwards, he pushed away the panicked researcher and sat down on his own. He had a bold but also the most reasonable idea, and he planned to show goodwill to the square life form in front of him. Although the existence and preliminary abilities of the square life in front of him have far exceeded the realm of humans, Andrew has to admit that Steve is also a human with a nose, a mouth, a pair of eyes and 2 legs, and arms that can take off just in terms of appearance. Although there won't be a human that grows into a square, that's right. SCP in human form has several benefits. Firstly, most of them possess a certain level of intelligence. Even infected individuals infected with zombie viruses have basic auditory and visual senses. Secondly, some of them are able to communicate, which means there is room for reconciliation. Andrew did not fail to think that the person in front of him might be a monster similar to SCP-096, shy person, very famous, I won't introduce it, describe appearance, I may be killed, but he did not take action against D.level personnel with weak vital signs in 173. So, he felt like he had a chance, and the gate of Side 19 used a special alloy, which was not easy to break through. So he turned on the microphone connected to the room. People can, at least they should give it a try. This is the most valuable first-hand information. If obtained in advance, it may reduce the casualties of the special forces and even peacefully shelter this terrible guy. Life is priceless at all times. Hello, unknown life. He swallowed his saliva and tried to speak in English. We are the SCP Foundation, and my name is Andrew. The organization and content of the Foundation will be set aside for now, but now we have a very important matter to inform you. Please absolutely, never turn back, and do not shift your gaze away from 173, otherwise in the moment you move away to achieve. Steve turned around and looked at the announcer on the wall. Which one is 173? A gust of wind came from behind, and the fluorescent light projected from the fake window was suddenly blocked by the tall statue, forming an eerie shadow in front of Steve. The mysterious statue, which was originally motionless, suddenly extended its hands. A huge force that seemed irresistible acted on Steve's neck, and without any defense, his head was violently turned 180 degrees. Damn it! Although Steve's condition was obscured and he couldn't see clearly, Andrew had already shouted that it was not good. This square head can create things out of thin air, can't you perceive the danger in front of you? He didn't think that Steve, who was not included in SCP, would die from a bone fracture so easily. He was even more worried that 173's actions would be considered hostile. What kind of crisis would the Foundation face if recognized as an enemy by this square person? But after a while, Steve's words dispelled his concerns. The block man slowly adjusted his forcibly twisted perspective and looked at the tall man in front of him. He tapped his stone skin as if measuring hardness, and said in a leisurely tone. Wearing golden shoes, if you don't hit me, I thought you and Miss Pigling were relatives, but after a while, you wanted to ambush me. No wonder I don't even want gold ingots, silver ingots, and diamond sets. Good guy, he just gave me a chaotic debuff, and my perspective was distorted. Even the novice isn't as cunning as you are. He's a good iron puppet, even dirtier than a witch. However, Master, be strong. Otherwise, I'll have to take action. The head of the square man turned 360 degrees and pulled out a diamond pickaxe out of thin air. Is there still a few thousand like this in Chapter 4? You are listening at novelfull.audio. This is Andrew. Andrew pressed the emergency communication button with a heavy heart, even though he had just pressed it a few minutes ago in awe. His face was filled with fatigue, as if he had finally been overwhelmed by the burden of life, and his tone was filled with strong lack of confidence and lethargy. He took a deep breath at the busy tone on the other end of the communicator and said, I am the person in charge of the Side Point 19 area experiment today. I dialed this button 5 minutes and 18 seconds ago, reported the emergency situation, and applied for support from the Special Task Force. But now, all wood is big. I am applying to cease the dispatch of Special Forces. Enemy, no, the newly emerged unlisted SCP has been confirmed to be communicable and intelligent. We have officially reached communication with them and stopped all hostile activities. The Special Forces no longer need to come. Oh, by the way, please send a team of cleaners. The floor here is not very clean, and SCP-173 has broken to the ground. As he spoke, he glanced at Steve standing in the center of the room, pondering something on a square mosaic, and sighed. By the way, bring 2 more chairs over and don't make our friend stand and wait for too long. The situation happened too quickly, and Dr. Andrew didn't even have time to stop it. In fact, there is nothing to stop it. In front of Steve's enchantment efficiency for diamond pick, the SCP-173, which is classified as a round stone material at most, was dug out in less than a second. Dr. Andrew just watched Steve create another diamond pick out of thin air on the monitor, and before he could even marvel, he saw him hit 173's fragile skin with a single pick. In the blink of an eye, countless cracks appeared on the massive statue. Subsequently, 173 shattered with a loud roar before Andrew's dry throat vocal cords let out a hoarse cry. Like an Octopus Brothers artwork. It's just a big nose difference. Andrew had mixed feelings in his heart. As the management PhD of SCP-173 this week, he has no emotional attachment to this shelter, but for the Foundation, it is a SCP full of commemorative significance. Because SCP-173 was the first work of the Foundation to enter people's vision. No matter how intelligence is leaked in the future, how various strange shelters appear on the streets and alleys, and how the SCP Foundation secretly shelters them, the Foundation is destined not to forget the role of this initial work in the Foundation's turning point. And now, this SCP with rich commemorative significance has cooled down and even shattered into pieces. Because of this sudden uncollected person who walked out of the mysterious purple gate. The wood is already in place, and Dr. Andrew is a sober person. He immediately gave up his useless memory of SCP-173 and continued to try to converse with the Cube Man, successfully obtaining his name Steve. Oh, God, this is such a simple and unadorned name. Just as unexpected as the real name of King Yu, who never dies, is actually called you boss. After hanging up the emergency communication, Dr. Andrew once again opened the loudspeaker inside the door. Dear Steve, may God bless you with happiness. Long time no see, I miss you so much. I hope you haven't forgotten me yet. I am your old friend Andrew. Steve, who was trying to figure out a formula for this uncontrollable iron puppet on the workbench, felt a tingle on his scalp. He looked up at the dark amplifier, as if his gaze had penetrated through it and the surveillance probe, directly facing Andrew. Andrew's forehead dripped a cold sweat. He just wanted to test whether Steve had a long lifespan and how his perception of time was, whether there was a subjective slow state or a characteristic of memory loss that led him to speak in this way. But did Steve see his own intentions and feel dissatisfied with his research mindset? Being targeted by an SCP pill. He didn't turn his head, afraid that Steve would also give him a lap around the neck in the moment he turned his head. He just lightly patted the researcher beside him and said, "Bring me a pen and paper." The young researcher, with orange hair and freckles on his face, looked a bit immature, but his eyes were twinkling with stars at the moment. With great fighting spirit, he handed the already written paper to Andrew. "Doctor, the suicide note is ready. You have done so much for everyone, and after you leave, I will also work harder and become a doctor who works hard. Do you know that there are 4 ways to write a Foundation suicide note?" Andrew twitched at the corner of his mouth. "Good student, what a good student. I have prepared all the suicide letters for you. I, Andrew, have read countless people throughout my life. I never expected to bring a newcomer to this Foundation, but I didn't see your ambition after all, it was the wrong payment. Do people here speak in this tone? Oh, my coolie is afraid of his mother. Your way of speaking is even more disgusting than the expired cake in the witch's cabin." After speaking, Steve ignored it and turned his head. "Do you have any other iron puppets? I haven't seen this material before. What mod is it from?" "Mod." The threat of terror was lifted. Andrew turned around and glared at the researcher, only to find that the suicide note, pen and paper, as well as the inheritance transfer and Alipay transfer QR code on the table had been swept away, and the researcher's brother was standing whistling. Seemingly noticing the doctor's gaze, he turned his head and put on a puzzled expression, saying, "He's asking you something, Doctor, what are you doing?" "Doctor. Good guy, the movements are so fast. Are you the SCP who infiltrated the researcher? Which department did you intern in before?" "Dr. Clef's office." "Okay, your suspicion has been ruled out. This is called a crooked upper beam and a crooked lower beam. You are actually good at using this deceitful technique." Andrew turned his head irritably, but had to put on a happy expression and replied. "If 173 is the case, there is only one. The SCP Foundation is a specialized organization for accommodating and monitoring anomalies. Since its establishment, although there are already thousands of anomalies being accommodated and monitored, each anomaly is unique in most cases. Thousands of types. Steve suddenly lifted his head. Are there thousands of special materials like this? Andrew's heart stopped beating. Did I say something that shouldn't have been said? Chapter 5. Quantum Controller. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Steve looked at the large stall on the workbench, which had no magical energy at all, but could still, it was an iron puppet that was once capable of action and surprise attacks. There are thousands of special materials and creatures like this in this strange place. This is not just dozens or hundreds, it's thousands. What limits Steve in my world? Is it night? Is it a monster? Or courage? None of them, it's the quantity that limits Steve. The quantity of minerals forced Steve to dig 3 by 6 feet to find rare diamonds, and repeat more than 10 times to create a set of rare diamond sets. The number of people in the last movie forced Steve to travel mountains and rivers, camping in the wilderness, and chasing after rare opportunities to search for the last movie pearls. The number of underwater temples, desert temples, villages, and dungeons if these rare buildings could be a little more. If their explosion rate could be billions of points higher. If there are alloys everywhere in the lower realm, if the pearl of the last shadow is easily obtainable, if the dragon head of the Coleoptera is like exploring a bag. Steve, how could I be so patient in the face of zombie skeletons? How could he suffer the humiliation of the hard-working family and become a son-in-law? I protect you. The coolies fear our family for 3 years, enduring it everywhere. Those who are afraid of the coolies will hide, and they will be humiliated and threatened by you with various self-destructive methods. Today, with countless rare metal protectors in this mysterious building, I will definitely build 108,173 heroes. The only bitter family can be destroyed with a single bullet. Sigma greater than over equal to, less than over equal to, sigma. Of course, Steve is a rational person. He thinks so. This is a place where there is a master, and he still understands this to some extent. No matter what kind of organization Andrew refers to as the SCP Foundation, if he wants to obtain these similar special metals or more interesting special materials, he must negotiate with them. I hope they are kind-hearted businessmen like the pig spirit girl, otherwise if they are the same as those villagers, Steve will have to plunder. Note: predation is an updated predator mechanism in MC. There is a monster called Predator that periodically raids villages and leaves a looting health bar at the top of the screen like a boss. However, Steve's history of doing this can be traced back to the newly released version of the village, so he is also known as the ancestor of the Predator. In MC survival videos, after discovering a village, there is usually a barrage of looting words. So, Andrew saw that he had just killed the terrifying square man of SCP-173 with a grim smile on his face. After hearing his unintentional words, Sichuan Opera changed its face and smiled, with its mouth tilted and its eyes lit up, seeming very excited. That, Andrew, right? Andrew only felt a chill in his spine, as if he had been targeted by a demon. It's really strange. A square demon with creation ability who just killed 173 is now communicating with me in English. I declare that I will be recorded in the annals of human history. Who agrees and who opposes? Yes, Mr. Steve. Andrew gritted his head and answered, do you have anything you need? It was agreed beforehand that you cannot leave this room at the moment. The door of the room is blocked by the one you summoned, and it will take 8 rooms to open it. Steve waved his hand. Oh, it's okay. You can use a diamond pickaxe to gently dig a few times and quickly break the gates of hell. Hell's Gate. Okay, Steve, you still said you're not a demon. Andrew only felt his throat dry. He nodded to the people around him, and the researcher took out a suicide note with understanding. Fool, the suicide note is not important. That block man doesn't need to deceive us. Since he said the diamond pickaxe will work on the magic gate, then prepare a diamond pickaxe. This kind of magic gate that can obviously achieve spatial jumping and its production materials will definitely be helpful for the Foundation's research. The cursed researcher ran out of the surveillance room in a disheveled manner. But Dr. Andrew has made up his mind to give his internship a rating of Z. What, without Z, the lowest rating is E. I don't care, either he was fired today or I was cleared of A.level memory. After the researcher left, Andrew continued to say, Mr. Steve, can't you come out on your own? Sure, but if I break your door, I won't compensate. Steve said as he put down the 173 fragments in his hand and pulled out the murder pick again, I am very reasonable. You asked me to open the door, and I recorded it. I will definitely not compensate. As he spoke, Steve tapped on the redstone torch and record player that had been placed aside at an unknown time. Andrew quickly stopped Steve. This door is made of alloy and has been smashed. With the head of the Foundation, he would never risk offending the shelter and asking Steve to compensate. So who should be the one who should be losing money? When Andrew thought of that astronomical number, he felt it was better to let Steve break himself into reality. Mr. Steve, by the way, where does your weapon and that strange recording machine come from? Andrew finally asked this important question, which was related to the rating of Steve's danger, and he couldn't help but be careless. Taking advantage of Steve's lack of hostility, asking earlier can be considered a contribution to the Foundation. Faced with Andrew's inexplicably expectant gaze, Steve became puzzled. He glanced at the pickaxe, then at the record player, and naturally said, I brought it myself. Andrew. Of course I know this is you. Cough cough, you brought it yourself, but where are they all placed? Put it in my pocket. Wait. Steve suddenly covered his pocket, are you envious of my diamonds? Bullying me, not opening death, not dropping. Andrew really wants to kill those idiots who tamper with the Oxford Dictionary now. Can't you use your brain too much when editing words and give me some complete annotations? In that case, I can also look up the dictionary now. Can anyone explain to me what this square head is actually saying? Forget it, you can't take it away anyway. When you die, put a bucket of magma for swimming, and even burn diamonds with people. Steve muttered, my things are all here, in my pocket, but you can't see them. Unless I want to take them out, you won't get anything. Andrew is ready to write a complaint letter to the University of Oxford. But he suddenly realized something. Steve said that things are always there, but they can't see them unless he takes them out. Perhaps it is a special vocabulary of the square person, and what he wants to express is that unless he observes, things will not appear. I understand, I see perhaps this guy is a quantum-controlled type of SCP. Chapter 6. There are many of these things in our area, do you want them? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Quantum Controller, Boundary Breaker, Visitor to Hell, Cube Demon. Steve probably didn't know yet that his image had left an indelible shadow in Andrew's young heart. He is just happy now, planning to have some straightforward transactions with the people from the Foundation. According to Steve's habit and what he believed was the fairest barter rule, he first took out emeralds the size of a bowl from his pocket and arranged them in a row on the ground, about 64 in total. Do you accept these things? I'll exchange some rare metals of this type with you. Steve pointed to the fragments beside him. Emerald, big drop good, you drop, don't you be moved. Andrew fell silent. Emerald, an emerald the size of a bowl. Although foundations have never been organizations lacking activity funds, is this too exaggerated? So many such large emeralds. Is hell so rich before? So, is this how Satan used human greed to seduce kind-hearted people into corruption? Andrew is not a saint, and in the face of such a level of wealth, he still feels somewhat moved. But soon, he regained his sanity. Steve claimed to be a hellish guest who appeared from the gates of hell. Trading with him was trading with demons, and both the Bible and comics have warned believers that trading with demons is like seeking skin from a tiger, and in the end, there will be no bones left in the pit. Oh, I'm not a believer. Andrew smiled slightly. But I refuse. Watching Steve's slightly disappointed but not too surprised expression, Andrew silently helped his glasses. I'm not a saint, but I know that even if I get money, I have to spend my life. Moreover, if anything unexpected happens to the world due to my transaction, Andrew would rather bear the fate of being beaten to pieces by angering Steve. The Foundation may not have a conscience, and the moral standards of its members may not even reach the world average. However, the Foundation always protects the world, doing its best, even if it does necessary evil, even if it suffers from flesh and blood. Fortunately, Steve didn't look angry. Steve was not surprised. After all, even on his side, only unscrupulous merchants and villagers would purchase things like emeralds. Besides them, emeralds are basically the least useful type in the gemstone category. So much so that he didn't actually have much. This group is probably all his belongings. So, compared to the embarrassment of if the Foundation really accepts emeralds, not accepting them actually makes Steve feel at ease. But in that case, we'll have to pay for it. Steve gritted his teeth and took out a diamond block from his pocket. Can this thing be exchanged? Andrew swallowed his saliva. What metal is this? The pale blue shell exudes an incredibly hard texture when viewed from afar, as well as the rare expression of flesh pain on Steve's face. This thing must be very precious. If a new element is discovered, it can be awarded the Nobel Prize. If this new metal element is not dangerous to the outside world and can be put into use, it can even be awarded the Foundation's Medal of Honor. Andrew had no reason to refuse directly. He hesitated for a moment and nodded. Sure, but make sure there is no danger. What dangers can diamond blocks pose? Steve squinted his lips. These country bumpkins have never seen a diamond block before. If this thing is dangerous, I will show you swimming in magma. Please make sure to give me all of your things. But this kind of thing is still well thought of in his heart, and Steve's face still showed a cunning merchant smile. Okay, let's do this, a diamond block, and exchange it for something similar. What kind of containment metal are you talking about? How about that? Diamond blocks. Andrew was stunned for a moment. Do you call that thing a diamond? That carbon element. Don't talk anymore, it's completely unrelated. Whether it's the appearance or texture, I can tell at a glance that it's not a diamond. But since you said so, that's it. But the quantity of replacement is also a bit too small. This SCP shelter is a beloved family, friend, sibling of the Foundation. You need to pay more. Just as Andrew was about to raise the bar with Steve, a chill of steel came from his chin. After staying at the Foundation for so long, Andrew immediately realized what had happened. He raised his hand and cooperated by closing his eyes, not looking at the source of the slowly approaching footsteps. Ensure that your life is not choked to death by the peanuts shot from the smoky gun. I don't know what kind of big shot the leader sent me. He silently thought, only listening to a soft female voice calmly ordering. Let's clear Dr. Andrew's memory. I'll take over the next steps. A faint solemnity appeared on the pale face of the girl with long wine-red hair. The entire incident is kept confidential, and all members of this research laboratory need to undergo memory erasure. Then, she connected the communication to the amplifier. Hello, Mr. Steve. Dr. Andrew has some last-minute matters to attend to. Next, let me talk to you about the transaction. My name is Christina and I am the manager of the area, with a level of 4. Steve didn't think much and nodded, admitting the fact of the replacement. Christina breathed a sigh of relief and continued. We have a very regrettable news here. 10 minutes ago, due to the opening of your Hell Gate, the nearby detention room for SCP-096 was found to have a security gap. SCP-096 was witnessed and broke through the detention control. It is now in a state of detention failure. Steve furrowed his non-existent eyebrows. Do you mean, should I help you find it back? I think we can make a deal about this. You can cooperate with our task force to recover the extremely dangerous 096, and we will provide you with the alloy you want after the incident subsides. What are his characteristics? He is tall and has black skin most of the time, which attacks all life forms that witness his face, including those seen in photos. He moves extremely fast and almost teleports. Steve suddenly raised his hand and interrupted Christina's words. The square man scratched its chin, pondered for a moment, and after a few seconds, he clapped his palm. Oh, I know what you're talking about now. If you see your face, you will launch an attack and keep chasing for 9 times. Your movement speed is also very fast, just like teleportation. Are you talking about Enderman? That's easy to handle. You don't need to catch that one anymore. Don't worry about it. You can pick out anyone like this last Shadow Man, from my family, except for the last Shadow Mother's wife. We have a lot of these things there, and there are hundreds of them all over the place. Do you want them? Looking at Steve laughing and talking incessantly, Christina suddenly regretted taking on this task. There's still one more place, several hundred. Small theater. The attached picture is Christina. If you don't like it, I'll change it. A carrot system. Chapter 7. I want this monster. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Christina spent 5 minutes fully understanding this fact. Steve the Cube Man may have some human factors, but without a doubt, he is definitely not a human. Humans wouldn't give diamonds and emeralds to people one by one, and then give them away in boxes. Humans also do not feel adapted to SCP-096, and may even develop emotions. Do you think you are a reader of a certain website who can turn plants, animals, organic matter, ancient evil gods, indescribable things, and even Mother Earth into the perfect wife that perfectly matches your XP? You're not, you're just a square person. You can't do it. Trembling and cold, when can I stand up? Okay. Christina still can't accept Steve calling 096, or rather an unseen person, his wife. But apart from this topic, she confirmed that she could calm down and have a conversation with Steve. She connected her communicator and said to the voice across from the microphone. We have confirmed that the target SCP has a safety level of safe and can engage in friendly communication and interaction. There are currently no obvious abnormalities. We request to open the isolation door of the side .19 detention room. Drop. The busy tone across from the communicator brought a long warning sound but suddenly stopped, and the door still didn't seem to open. Christina frowned and repeated. Request to open the isolation door of the side .19 detention room. Is there any special requirement from 05? Please provide specific instructions. Drop. The same prompt sound came again, but the door still did not open. Just as Christina was about to speak again, the earphones rang out again. Drop. Dee 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 dee. Dee 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 dee. Christina quickly took off her earphones with a clanging sound, avoiding the tragedy of her pitiful eardrums not being deafened by the possible sound category of SCP and falling on her own hands. What's going on today? Not only was 173 inexplicably executed by an unlisted SCP, but there was also a problem with the busy phone number with the emergency handling office. Can't it be his fault? Christina glanced at Steve, who was a bit bored stomping his feet in the detention room, feeling a bit nervous. She clenched the earphones in her hand and asked the other side for the last time. Parliament. 05, what's wrong with you? If there is no one answering this time, or if there are those eerie beeps coming out, Christina is ready to use level 4 authority to dispatch a special task force over. Let's appease Steve together. Never let this strange guy come up with any more fancy things, the situation is already chaotic enough. Drop. The prompt sound came from the opposite side once again, just as Christina was about to hang up communication and connect to the task force, a trembling voice finally came from the opposite side of the busy tone. The Artificial Intelligence Application Department, AIAD, responded. This door is damaged. There were no prompts, no guidance, and even no response like that. I simply reported to a department and hung up the phone. Is the sound of emotions just now that you were trying to open the door? Are you feeling extremely angry? Are you in a hurry? Christina chuckled, but at that moment, a strange clang sound came from the entrance. Next, there was the sound of iron fragments falling to the ground, along with Steve's simple and unaffected magnetic voice. The old version of Steve would scream when attacked by monsters, which was quite magnetic, but I don't know if it still exists now. Don't stare at me like that, I will compensate. Although it is known that demolishing a house is a despicable behavior of a bare child, one will be lit with a sky lamp and immersed in a pig cage. But Steve was really tired of waiting. Firstly, Andrew planned to make a deal with himself, but was temporarily transferred away. The new woman named Christina hung herself up here again. This ghost gate keeps creaking and creaking. Thinking back to Andrew saying before he left, the door was broken. When Steve summed it up, he might not be able to open it, so he decided to dig it up himself. Don't ask is the diamond pickaxe with efficiency for the Side 19 detention room where 173 was imprisoned was not originally made of the same special metal as SCP. Although the diamond pick was a bit slower to dig than obsidian, it took some effort to dig through. The first thing Steve did after coming out was to decisively put away the pickaxe, take out the fence he had not used in a long time, place it on the ground, and then take out a piece of white wool, which violated physical knowledge, and placed it on the top of the fence. I surrendered. What is he talking about? A special task force officer asked. He is speaking French. Another 1,000 members of the German-American Special Task Force answered. Mao Z on the side smashed it twice with a local accent. I think he's speaking German. In the story my grandfather told me when he was a child, Germans just say that. Are we going to shoot? The initial task force member said, and the German man beside him gave him a hard tap on the head. New here, if you're going to shoot now, you don't even have to wait for the Foundation to treat you to peanuts, he can break you down. You don't know what that door is made of. He broke that thing out. Okay. So what should we do now? Why, wait for the leader to speak. This is headquarters. What can happen to headquarters? At the observation station above, Christina was already confused. She glanced at the researcher beside her. These people will also be cleared of A.level memory anyway. Should they no longer be allowed to exert their remaining heat? Comrades, for the party in the country. Bah, it's time to make contributions to the Foundation. Who will meet that SCP? Before she could finish speaking, she regretfully turned around and suddenly pressed the button on the amplifier. Forgot to turn it off. It's done now. Steve, standing below, smacked his lips, took out a golden apple from his pocket, swallowed it in 3 or 2 bites, drew his diamond sword, pointed it at the S11 observation room of the Foundation, and shouted. No need for anyone else. I just want you, Christina. Christina's sudden cardiac arrest. What kind of expression are you guys having? Are you envious of being caught by SCP? Small theater. Humble author. Seeking Flowers. Christina 2. Chapter 8. I Shake People. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Christina looked around the room. The walls are white, and the Foundation seems to have a special fondness for this color, but there is a faint gray light mixed in with this white. Christina knows the metal that emits this kind of light. The high-strength nanomaterials studied by Dr. Wang Sanshue in nanomaterials science are said to easily cut a normally moving 10,000-ton wheel into thousands of layers of cake with just a thin layer of less than 1 mm in thickness. Even high-precision instruments such as computers that are cut apart by this material can be easily repaired. It can be said that it is a great invention, although it does not have the sensational magic of SCP containment, it is undoubtedly the pinnacle of materials science that normal human technology can currently achieve. The invention of this material is worth awarding Dr. Wang Sanxue a Nobel Prize. But this time is destined to be postponed for a few years, because even if this nanomaterial has entered the mass production stage, Dr. Wang Sanxue, who is fully controlled and supported by the Foundation, must first meet the needs of the Foundation, and only after the Foundation agrees can the invention be made public. And these requirements are all sorts of strange, for example, building such a room. Christina never imagined that one day she would be forced into such a room. Rather than lamenting about technology, she felt her buttocks cool. Isn't this chair also made of nanomaterials? Shouldn't I be cut into molecules by the chair if I didn't do something right? Thinking of this, Christina moved her buttocks anxiously. Don't feel awkward, I'm not good at this. Steve tilted his head and waved his hand. If anyone in the family knows, then the problem will be big. Even though this woman looks pretty smooth and quite unique, it successfully sparked Steve's curiosity, but a little bit unbearable led to chaos in the history of the great strategy. Dragon Slayer hero, Tiff, how could he be tempted by this? Find a deserted place later and let me study your body structure. As the saying goes, heroes are saddened by beauty. What about dragon-slaying heroes? They're not heroes anymore. Steve wants to study how these round-headed, and round buttocks monsters can support their bodies without collapsing. Please don't wear yellow glasses to speculate on this level of scientific attitude. Christina's nostrils twitched slightly. It's not for you to see. What kind of self-indulgence, block man? When did I suffer from this injustice, my esteemed regional supervisor? But what's the solution? The task given by the leader is to gather intelligence, preferably by asking him to provide specific coordinates and directions for 096 and 096 hometown, which he calls the final destination. Even if she suffers a great deal of injustice, Christina can only grit her teeth and swallow it. Now let's talk openly about the transaction. The conditions we just proposed remain unchanged. If you can inform us of the location of the destination, we can provide more things you want. It's just a rare metal, there are many foundations, so it's not a problem to compile a periodic table of elements. Steve also nodded happily. Isn't it just about finding a last person? Others may not be able to do it, but Steve is really not afraid. Besides, the people from the Foundation have said that as long as they see the face that hasn't appeared, even if they see it in a photo, he will come all the way and spare no effort. What's so rare about this? Isn't it a waste of time? Besides, even if looking at photos doesn't work for Steve, does he still have a trump card? If it's not a big deal, why don't we invite the one from home to come and find him? I took on this task. Steve generously waved his hand, and his confident expression reduced Christina's hesitation. She nodded, took the file bag from the side, and handed it to Steve. There is only a blurry photo of SCP-096 that a special agent of the Foundation exchanged with his life. Although the photo is not very clear due to lighting factors, it is enough to make 096 react. As she spoke, she stood up. Next, we need to choose a safe place to implement our trapping plan. The Foundation's Special Task Force will assist you from the side. If unexpected situations occur, as long as you call for help, the Foundation will do its best to rescue you. Christina carried her back and waited for Steve's approval and unlikely gratitude, but after a while, Steve remained silent. This makes her a bit strange. She turned around and said, Mr. Steve, if you have no other objections, let's choose the trading location. I advise you not to turn around at this time. The usual casual and serious tone became more serious. Long-term training and experience in interacting with outsiders made Christina immediately make the right judgment. She forcefully terminated her turning motion, maintaining a strange posture and pausing in place, without even moving her eyeballs curiously. The response is good. As for the last person on your side, This is a long disability. Steve reached out his hand, his square-like arm brushing against the cherry blossom-colored dust. It should have been like that. But now, the dust is only a nauseating charcoal black, like the foul mud in the sewer, like the white snow under diesel jet. People in this world seem to be unable to see this dust, otherwise they would never have been completely unaware of the appearance of the last person. But Steve could see it, so the moment he took the file bag and opened it, he pulled out the diamond sword. Speaking of which, Christina seems to be asking me not to look here. She seems to say she wants to choose a auspicious day, a feng shui treasure, and witness it with me. Never mind, there is no turning back when opening the box. If you draw a white light, it will be white light. Even if you sign, Steve still has the courage to face him. Do you think I would be afraid of someone like you, who is pitch black and has no iconic eyeballs? Steve quickly placed the obsidian blocks at 2 heights around him, and then confidently picked up the diamond sword. Eat my pedicure technique, stupid 3-grid expert. With one sword, both sides are injured. Nanny. 096 crouched down under Steve's surprised gaze, dived into a 2-grid high field, and swung his claws toward Steve as he swung his sword. You have broken the boundary between 2 high figures. You are not the last person to appear, who are you? Without time to be surprised, Steve had no choice but to retract his sword and turn around, his sharp claws barely brushing against Steve's diamond armor. With the blessing of the golden apple he had just eaten, half of his heart remained intact. But this accident has already raised Steve's spirits. His sharp claws have brushed against my armor. Rounded up, he stabbed me in the middle. I'm dying. Steve is such a cautious person. He wouldn't go to hell without a diamond suit, and wouldn't hit a dragon without an infinite bow. Such a dangerous thing, there's no next time. After his experienced judgment, he could no longer solve this situation that goes against common sense alone. In order to complete the commission, obtain the alloy, and be cautious for insurance, he wanted to shake people. Good boy, wait for me. When my Royal Highness Princess comes, you will have no juice. He pointed to 096 while wearing a pumpkin head on his head, straightened it, and then cursed and took out a last shadow pearl, smashing it onto the ground. A burst of fireworks like pink petals exploded and filled the entire space. Small theater. The attached picture shows Mo Ingyang. Chapter 9. We have the best doctors to help you survive. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Seeking Little Flower, the cherry pink dust drifted across the sky, and apart from Steve, who would never go blind as long as he wasn't blinded, no one could see clearly the situation inside this nano-prison. Even the surveillance camera only captured a pitch-black scene, with dust already engulfing him. But 096 does not rely on visual identification, and the way the invisible person searches for enemies is not by seeing, but by feeling. As long as you look directly at it, no matter where you are, it can detect it and launch attacks like wolves and tigers. This time was no exception. Although startled by the sudden special effects, 096 quickly reacted and rushed straight ahead. Until being trapped in the armpits of fate. The dust in the sky finally dissipated. Christina looked at 096, who looked like a cub being lifted by her mother, swallowed a mouthful of water, and moved her frightened gaze along the hands wrapped in black gloves towards the sudden eerie appearance. Is it a monster? Is it a new SCP containment facility? Or is it a block man like Steve? Regardless of what it was, Christina felt that she had the ability to accept it. In just a few hours, she felt that her psychological resilience had reached a point where she could handle the end of the world button calmly. Speaking of which, is my psychological state abnormal? Foundation, help me, I don't want to become an SCP. But to her surprise, what appeared in her sight was not any creature she had imagined, but a real person. Fluttering black long hair, exquisite facial features with an indescribable sense of mystery, shimmering purple eyes calmly staring ahead. Wearing a black dress and small black leather shoes. Except for her eyes, she almost blended with black, but Christina didn't feel that she would become invisible in the dark because of it. The innate fear and strong presence told her that this girl was very scary. Before Steve showed her strength in the fourth natural disaster, Christina felt that this was one of the most horrible creatures she had ever seen in her life. Don't look at her. Steve spoke out as a reminder. In fact, even he didn't want to stare at the queen of the last film. The feeling of being noticed by her for a moment without paying attention, and then following you step by step without leaving. A moment of relaxation and being stuck on your face, like a piece of candy that can't be shaken off, is really terrible. But since he had already teleported her over with the Shadow Pearl to save his life, Steve had no choice but to accept his life. This world is full of crises, and although Her Majesty is a bit sickly and annoyed, at least she won't really kill herself, right? Probably. Steve looked at the Queen. Long time no see, Ender. He raised his eyebrows and couldn't help but say, "How did you grow up like this, Ghost?" The Queen of the Last Shadow moved her arms and shook her head. "I don't know, but it's so ugly. Where is this place? How could there be so many ugly things?" She gave Christina a glance, and Steve immediately took a cautious step towards Christina. "My family has a good temper. Last time, I just talked to the village girl a few more words, exchanged feelings, and stole some wheat. However, the next day when I went to the village to harvest, the iron puppet had already turned into an iron block. If it weren't for my pumpkin head being so fast, I might have had to travel mountains and rivers to come back and pick up the corpse." But strangely enough, Ender just gave Christina a faint glance and withdrew his gaze, as if he had accidentally seen something dirty, without any intention of cleaning her up. Steve. What? What's going on? Christina. Steve. Why didn't you die? Christina was about to cry and said, "Did I do something wrong? I can change it." Steve spun around Christina a few times, then scratched his head and looked at Ender, who was frowning and looking at 096, "To touch it, something's wrong. I've talked to you so much, why haven't you had anything to do?" As he spoke, Steve took a step forward, domineeringly holding Christina's hand, and then looked at Ender again. This time, Ender finally had a reaction. With her back to Steve, her head rotated 180 degrees, and a look of disgust appeared on her face. "Don't touch me today. Go back and wash your hands. Wash your hands. I don't want to publicize your touching of feces, and I'm not interested in cleaning, so go wash your hands for me quickly, it's so dirty." Steve finally understood Ender's thoughts. The last Shadow Men were not originally aggressive towards humans, or in other words, they had no aggression towards most life forms. Their pleasure was just moving blocks and building strange structures. Unless you had to face them to death, even if you encountered a gathering of 100 last Shadow Men in the wild, as long as you lowered your head, there would be no problems. But this has to be built on the foundation of being human, Steve. Although it was not explicitly stated, Steve felt that the guys in this world were quite ugly, and that Square 173 was even more attractive than these people. Steve can remain silent due to the transaction, but Ender is different. She had always disliked Steve's flirting with other women, so she was naturally unhappy with Christina, who was a woman, but she didn't want to act like an iron puppet just like the old rulers. Seeing the old seal, "This thing, if touched, it will take a whole year to go by." Ender, holding his mouth, urged Steve to wash his hands amidst his muttering, "You become such a ghost too," while he turned his head and looked at 096 with deep pity in his eyes. "It's really fortunate that you've suffered so much. You've been in this world of shattered aesthetics for so long. Look, what's all this slimming down like? My eyes are all white, are you blind to see shit? Don't worry, when I bring you back to the last cinema, our times have changed. Since the dragon died, everything at the last cinema has improved. I promise, I will arrange the best doctor to help you overcome it. Christina. Although I feel like I've been insulted very badly. At least my life was saved, right? However, this is 096. No, is it the leader of the Enderman tribe? She walked forward and reached out her hand to Ender. Hello, beautiful lady. Woo woo. Ender flickered and shrank into the corner. Christina covered her chest in sadness and said, "Are you serious about taking a half step back? A small action can cause so much harm. Small theater, ... which one looks better, the attached picture or the last shadow girl?" Chapter 10. Dalabang Bar. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. No matter how hard she has been hit, as a researcher and one of the top 10 employees of the Foundation, Christina guarantees to stay alert and calm at all times. SCP is inherently different from ordinary people, and even from this world. Their aesthetic views are just like those of a certain 5 tiger generals, and cannot be generalized from ordinary people. Just being classified as ugly rather than annoying, Christina can now breathe a sigh of relief for herself and humanity. While Steve was huddled aside and washing her hands with the bucket of water that completely violated physical knowledge, Christina felt like she should do something. For example, to understand the mental state and living conditions of this shelter, I didn't brush my teeth this morning, what I had for lunch, and if I want to know the Wi-Fi password, the most important thing is whether they are willing to accept shelter, or whether they can return to their world and ensure that they do not pose a threat to it when necessary. The Foundation is unwilling to forcibly detain, engage in peaceful talks, and reach agreements. This approach is much cheaper than mandatory detention and less likely to cause casualties. After all, SCP is infinite and can occur at any time, but the Foundation's special forces have limits and cannot grow out of thin air. Training a qualified team member is much more difficult than catching 2D-level soldiers in prison and on the execution ground. So Christina spoke up. "Miss Ender, if you find me uncomfortable, I can stay a little further away." She took a few steps back, showing her kindness, and the unseen person pouted as a tacit acceptance of her actions. "I didn't mean anything, I just wanted to get to know you. For SCP, it is best not to lie. Not everyone has the ability to detect lies, but most of them have the ability to make you pay a huge price after detecting lies." Christina, as a researcher and regional manager, has a curiosity about the newly emerging SCP. This is not a lie, and even a rational Ender has no reason to get angry. She shrugged her shoulders and shifted her gaze away from her, with a strong expression. "I'm too lazy to care about you. What do you love? I just want to know if Steve's done or not." Steve has done it. He scooped up the water that was only half a grid high on the ground with a bucket and confidently took it back. Christina is no longer surprised, even though the remaining part of the bucket of water gradually evaporates rapidly into the air after being left behind by the main water source. She is too lazy to scream like those inexperienced interns in the surveillance room. Christina pondered for a moment. She didn't know Steve, nor did she know Ender. She had to chat with a diamond man who only valued mineral materials and 096 who only valued diamonds. At that time, she really didn't know how to speak up. But Steve stood in front of her with an air of, "My wife has finished the task for me, can we go and collect things now? By the way, wife." Christina's nerves became lively, talking to women about men, talking to men about women, which has always been an unchanging topic engine and a powerful tool for deepening friendship. How many people are going through and have gone through things like roast about their boyfriends, or being a philanderer, talking about making friends, or scolding girls together. Christina decided to impress Ender with the rich entertainment and gossip spirit of the earth. "Let's first support Steve. Mr. Steve, you can follow the task force outside the door to select the special materials you want. We don't just have diamonds here. If possible, please let Miss Ender stay here for safety reasons." Steve waved his hand. I know not to bring non-combat characters when exploring new environments. Ender, please stay here and wait for me. I'll be back soon. Let's walk back to the gates of hell together and not waste any pearls." The black-haired woman gently closed 096's eyes. Although she was very dissatisfied, compared to Steve, her combat effectiveness was not very high. She hooked her hand to Steve. "Give me a pumpkin head." Steve instinctively flipped through his pocket and then awkwardly shook his head. "I didn't bring it." Ender furrowed her beautiful eyebrows. "Why not bring pumpkin heads? I only see you as the last person all day, what do I wear?" Ender was momentarily taken aback, then quickly turned his head and whispered for a long time. "That's right. So, the test of whether pumpkin heads are useful to you will be postponed." Ender sighed and shook his hand. "You go, come back quickly. I hate this way now." Steve gave her a strange glance, then glanced at Christina, and then nodded, "I understand, I'll do it as soon as possible." Until Steve left, Christina calmly moved closer to Ender, boldly experiencing the surprise that even looking at 096 wouldn't kill her. She whispered, "Miss Ender, are you and Mr. Steve from the same place?" Ender glanced at Christina, shook her head, and said in a muffled voice, "No, it's not." Christina was slightly surprised that it wasn't the same place. "That's right, Ender and Steve don't have the same artistic style at all. They look more like humans on Earth. But when it comes to this, how much greater is Steve's danger?" At the beginning, when Andrew reported, he said he could talk and had no malicious intent, so I judged that the difficulty of containment was relatively low and gave him a safe level. However, now it seems that people with obvious characteristics of time and space travelers, who have gone to more than one world may not be willing to accept containment. This needs to be noted down and will be reported to the 05 Council later. After organizing her expressions, Christina exclaimed curiously. "Surprisingly not. How did you get to know each other?" Ender closed his eyes. After a while, she sighed, and when she opened her eyes, there was actually a hint of tenderness and nostalgia. "This is a long story, do you really want to listen?" Christina nodded sincerely. Ender hugged 096 like a doll, turned around, and for the first time, met Christina head-on. At this moment, Christina realized that Ender's body seemed to be wrapped in a shell-like substance with purple fluorescence, cutting off space and making her surroundings sparkle with black speckled voids like garbled code. The charming pink petal dust was drifting out of those speckled voids. "What is this thing?" Before Christina could study those voids, Ender slowly spoke out, his cold voice carrying a distant emptiness unique to the last film, like a medieval bard reciting an ancient hymn. "A long, long time ago, the last shadow, dragon suddenly appeared and brought disaster, taking away the princess and disappearing. The kingdom, last city, was very dangerous. Who is the bravest in the world?" A brave man rushed over and shouted loudly,